Okay, what's up, guys? So today we're going to be diving into UFO sightings, stories, and all to find out, okay, so if UFOs really are true, well, what do these sightings have in common? And the same goes for the stories. I want to see if people are telling the truth. So some of it should match, and the way we will effectively do this is by looking at a story from ancient sightings, then a Middle Age story, and lastly, something that's more recent. So the first case we're going to get into is the Newmanburg aerial event in 1561. So this is from an article posted by the publicdomainreview.org. In the morning of April 14th, 1561, between 4 and 5 a.m., residents reported seeing an aerial battle take place. These were orbs, crosses, rods. They all fought among themselves for over an hour until they fell from the sky onto earth in a large black smoke and burned away. Here's what I consider the really interesting part. After all of that whole battle, there was a long black spear. It was thick and very long. All right, guys, so after that last detail, that was a pause moment for sure. Okay, but anyways, so that's honestly, that story is super, super interesting. It is super different from any of the other ones. And there was like a artist from that time that like a month later released a like artist rendition of what they seen that night. So that's really cool. You can find it on publicdomainreview.org website. It's on the article. It's at the top. There's like a picture of a bunch of the shapes, orbs and crosses and rods and the black spear. So that was super cool. But honestly, I mean, there was a lot of people that reported seeing what they saw that morning. So a lot of people witnessed this event. On the actual artist rendition, there's like, he actually explained what was seen that morning, and it's pretty funny because it's honestly really hard to even read because of the translation, I guess. It just kind of is all over the place. It doesn't really, it's not proper. I can't, it's like hard to understand. Okay, on to the next. Okay, so the next UFO account. This next story is based on an article from Riley's Believe It or Not. In 1639, John Winthrop, the governor of Massachusetts, was in a boat with James Everell, which he describes as a sober, discreet man, and two other men in the muddy river, when out of nowhere a bright light was spotted. According to the men, the light was hovering at first, but then began flying at high speed, back and forth between their vessel and the village of Charleston. Winthrop described that when the light stood still, it would flame up, and as it flew, it would turn into the figure of a swine and would fly so graciously. It flew for hours, as the men were so captivated watching it the entire time. However, this isn't the end, as the men watched for hours. Eventually, when the light vanished, they realized they were back in the original location with no memory of rowing back. The men thought that the light had transported them back. So for this one, I mean, it's a governor that's freaking holds tons of weight itself. And in the books or his journals, which this story was taken out of or found in, other days where he writes like normal, basic, real, like, it would make sense that they came across that in their journeys type of stories. So super like grounded, I guess you could say. I feel like you should give some validity to that. So I feel like that's super interesting. I mean, this story was said to be very different from the other stories he would tell. It really stood out. But yeah, so him and his buddies, I guess, freaking going down the dang river, found a dang light just flying. I guess you could trust a governor and a few of his buddies. Am I right? I don't think they would have any reason to lie. Honestly, Could you imagine just being with like two of your friends in a boat going down the dang river, and out of nowhere some light is freaking following you and flying out fast? That would freak me out. I'd be like, what the hell is that? And then they freaking time traveled, and then they time traveled on top of that. Good lord. So honestly, with this story, I feel pretty good about the details and descriptions. When he says he's rowing down in the river, and the light comes out of nowhere, that it's traveling from him where they're at 2 miles away, coming back, and it's as swift as an arrow, and that when it stands still, it flames up. I I believe those guys honestly see what they said they saw that night. So yeah. Okay, so the next story we're gonna get into is the Kenneth Arnold sighting. So this one's a super big one. You guys probably know it. Tons of people know about it. It's one of those kind of like holy grails. So this story is based on an article posted by the Statesman Journal. So on June 24th, 1947, Kenneth Arnold was flying his plane near Mount Rainier when he decided to look for a Marine Corps transport plane that had crashed on the southwest side of the mountain. As he was looking, he was blinded by a light, and it lit up the sky, which at first he thought was the sun. But the second time the light shined into his plane, he was able to see where it was coming from. As he looked out of his plane at the top of Mount Rainier, that's where he saw 9 disc-shaped objects, all in formation. The objects were hundreds of feet big. He said there were no contrails and had no wings. As the object flew from mountain to mountain, he timed it using a clock on his control board. It was estimated that it could have been flying 1,200 miles per hour, faster than anything the U.S. had in 1947. It was when he landed at an air show in Pendleton, Oregon, where he met a reporter from the East Oregonian. Sorry, I don't know how to say that word. Oregonian. That he gave his account, and in the report was the term flying saucer, which had not been used before and is now the most iconic term in UFO history. So, for that, with that story, I honestly really like that story. I mean, that story is one of the biggest, you know. The UFO whole saucer term, the whole thing, as it said, it hadn't been used before. That was like one of the first times that it had been used and has. But yeah, I found it interesting that he was out there in a plane looking for a down plane that was transporting a Marine Corps. Cause geez Louise, I would be like, oh my gosh, this is scary, bro. I wanna go home. Out there flying, looking for some freaking plane that's crashed. I'd be like, good golly. But I guess that money was good, so yeah, for this one I really just love that the shape, the term saucer, even I guess the color. I mean, the color was described as metallic by him, and so I love that that term came out of there and really has stayed, really has come to stay. So yeah. So it's worth mentioning this guy Kenneth Arnold. It wasn't his only time seeing I guess having a, I don't know what you would call it, but it's not his first time seeing objects. It's not his first time seeing a UFO. What was said, I read on the article from his, I believe his daughter said it, but she said that he went on to have like, I think 8 in total, 8 sightings, and he was tracking down tons of people that had stories of their own. But honestly, for him and his story, I feel really bad because when he came out with the story, he was just really like, I guess, mocked, and obviously people did not believe him at all. Um, and I guess he was pretty straight on guy, pretty, um, you know. So I felt kind of bad about that. I see that he went on to have a lot of difficulty with, like, I think his career and stuff like that. All right, guys. So now we're gonna get into the similarities about the UFO stories and sightings. So between all three, I find that the Nuremberg event was so unlike any other story I've heard of. But I can say that between the John Withrop sighting and Ken Arnold sighting, I find that the bright light, or a light in general, is very common, not only in these two sightings, but over the countless sightings, it seems to always start with a bright light, or there was a light in general. The second thing that I find common, and specifically in the story of John Withrop and Ken Arnold's story, these unidentified objects seem to always have almost unbelievable speed capabilities. That's something I've heard time and time again. It seems like these freaking objects like seem to be like flying at the speed of light or something. Like, it's honestly really stands out incredibly fast. I always hear how it was there 1 second and then it just shot away, took off. I see that in both stories. John Withrop's was how this light was just flying from where they're at 2 miles away and back and forth, and just as smooth as can be. So super crazy. So I find that a time travel claim in John Withrop's story is noteworthy because I have heard this time and time again in other sightings, which I would say gives a bit of validity to the story for that fact alone. It seems that in a lot of stories where people are abducted, they always seem to have missing time. So I find that really interesting. It's in that story, which is a story from 16. Hold on, let me see. It's a story from 1639. So I mean, come on, like hundreds of years ago, and it's being said still to like this day. That time travel, missing time, showing back up to the spot where you were, but not remembering how you got there. Is super crazy to me. So now for the formation of these UFOs, very interesting to me. It's the same detail in the story of the Phoenix lights. Ken Arnold said that there were about 9 disc-shaped objects, all in formation. Is this just a fragment of imagination, or the fact that it shows up in many stories, is there a little bit more to it? I see that detail seems to track in that story, that formation thing. I mean, like, what's going on there? A lot of these UFOs seem to just get all in line and like fly together. Like there's some groupie. I don't know what's going on there, but it seems to show up a lot. Okay, so the last thing I want to point out is the area in which UFOs are seen at. Now I'm sure all you've heard that there seems to be a lot of activity near military bases, and so I was digging and I found out that in the Ken Arnold story, Mount Rainier, where he had his sighting, there's a military base approximately 60 miles away. And in fact, he initially believed the objects he saw were secret military flights from a nearby base. So for the base thing, the military base, we've all heard it 100 times. I guess, I don't know why, but there's just so much activity. There's always a sighting near a military base. They always seem to be near a military base. I think that that fact tracks in the story of Ken Arnold's. It really is a good pinpoint. It sticks, holds true. And so for Ken Arnold's sighting, I give a lot of validity to it for many, many reasons. But nonetheless, very, very interesting story. I think that these objects always seem to be near a base. Even the one that flew over, that dang weird one where it looked like a jellyfish. I think that's what they're calling it. So flying over a military base, like, you know how crazy that is. It honestly makes no sense. So I think that it holds a little bit of water. The fact that this was nearby a military base, you know, could be a little bit more to that. So yeah. Okay, so next we're gonna get into the objects. So let's get into what was seen with the objects and what can we conclude from the details. First off, the bright lights. Now in the John Wick story, this object is described as a bright light, and in the Ken Arnold story, it starts off with a bright light. And in the Ken Arnold story, it starts off with the bright light, blinding him. So as for the characteristics of these objects, I feel safe to assume that these objects usually or always include an unusually bright light. The other thing is the shape of the Nuremberg event. The description of the spear is not the first time I've heard it. The spear seems to show up in other stories where the object is, again, very thick, long, and it was all black. So that reminds me of although I'm really not sure about what they seen that morning, I think the spear coming afterwards, like after the battle concluded, there's a little bit more questioning to the story rather than just going like, oh, that was just some type of natural event. You know, forget about it. Not only that, but how they described that the shapes fought among themselves. I feel like it's easy to tell whether these things are just flying past each other, flying, you know, around or whatever, and coming down versus like flying, hitting each other and staying in the air and hitting each other and hitting each other. I mean, it happened for over an hour, you know. So I found that interesting, but it's up to interpretation. Anyone else, I'm sure, would have a totally different take, and that's fine. Now, on the story of Ken Arnold, I read that he noted how the object had no audible noise. Although he was close, no sound from the craft was detected. Also, when the object jumped from the one mountain to the other, he tracked it going about 1,700 or from 1,200 to 1,700 miles per hour, in which you heard no sonic boom or mechanical noise. And I could say the same about the John Wick story. The light flew very fast and it was described as swift as an arrow. So no noise was documented. So the story of how you do not hear noise from these objects stands true in both of these stories. So yeah, you guys know that it's a super common like detail in that these objects don't seem to have any noise coming from them, period. So lastly, let's go over the color. You know that classic metallic silvery looking UFO? Well, that was noted in the Ken Arnold story. The object was metallic, silvery, shiny, almost blinded a man, so must have been damn shiny. All right, so the black spear in the Nuremberg event is an interesting color because it reminds me of the black, I think it was a black square or a black cube within a square or a circle, something like that, which was described from Ryan Graves. I feel that with the Ken Arnold's description of that classic metallic silvery color, it holds very true to a lot of descriptions told in stories, and the shape of the UFO being called saucer-like, it was pretty much where it all started. And so I think that his story has a lot of weight to hold, but I also wonder why would he just come up with that? I think that the color and shape is very specific, and it seems to show up in a lot of different stories. All right, guys, so this is the conclusion portion of the story. after looking into all of these stories, I think that in the world of these are 100% real, I think you could safely say that after all these years and detailed accounts, the truth would be that these UFOs almost always have a bright light to them, that they fly extremely fast. They hover in silence. They usually are of a metallic color. You'll probably find one near a military base, or if you have a sighting, it would be near a military base, which I wouldn't know why. Which it's in all of these stories. I feel almost after all of this time, I feel it's almost fact after everyone asking, like, are these real? Are these real? I would stick to the facts and to the basics. I would say that these exact things to say if they are, they should fit the description. So, by the way, guys, I know I got a freaking crazy ass setup here, but this is just the beginning. Here, doing this in my kitchen, and so just in advance. Sorry about that. Now, you guys tell me what you guys think down in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, share, and yeah.